Welcome back to The Explainer. So, today we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and honestly a wildly unconventional text from 2005 by an author named Zhu Feng. It's called The Preface to the Celestial Cultivation chapter. Now, what we've got here is a deeply structured look at human spirituality and our place in the cosmos. It's the kind of text that completely flips how we view our potential, our limits, and literally the very fabric of reality. Instead of treating spirituality as some vague, floaty concept, Zhu Feng actually builds a rigorous, almost scientific hierarchy of existence. Let's get right into it. We're going to break this framework down step by step. We'll start with nature's physical hierarchies, move on to the 5 human grades, explore reaching the celestial limit, and contrast conventional versus unconventional thinking. Then, we'll connect science and spirit, and finally wrap up with awakening spiritual perception.
Okay, Section 1, Nature's Physical Hierarchies, Establishing the Foundation.
So, Zhu Feng grounds his whole philosophy in stuff we can actually see every day. He argues that literally everything in existence has a specific grade. Take gemstones, right? They're objectively classified using hard metrics. We're talking hardness, refractive index, purity. You've got diamonds and rubies sitting at the absolute top, the highest grade. Then you move down to mid-grade stuff like crystals and jades. And finally, at the bottom, your low grade, granite and just, ordinary stones. He's establishing a baseline rule here. In nature, things are just simply not created equal. He really drives this structural view home with an oil analogy. Think about gasoline and kerosene. A car engine needs gasoline. You absolutely cannot pump kerosene into an airplane and expect it to fly, right? Or think about lubricating oil versus cooking oil. You obviously aren't going to fry up a meal in engine lube. The takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Different substances have distinct, built-in qualities, and entirely non-interchangeable purposes. Moving right along to Section 2, the 5 human grades, mapping human spirituality. Now, here's where it gets provocative. Zhu Feng takes that physical logic, the gems, the oils, and applies it straight to us, to human beings. He maps humanity onto these 5 ascending steps. He's arguing that people exhibit strict hierarchical differences too, but it's not based on physical hardness like a diamond. For humans, it's about your non-material structure, what he calls your root capacity. It's your spirituality, your upbringing, your wisdom. So humanity climbs this ladder, starting at step 1, the ignorant, moving up to the worldly, the ordinary, the virtuous, all the way to step 5, the celestial beings. But wait, the hierarchy doesn't actually stop there. The text chops up that highest tier even further. Even if you manage to reach that celestial level, there are different types: human celestials, ghost celestials, land celestials, deity celestials, and super celestial beings. Let's zero in on human celestials, which Shizetho basically equates to saints. They are split into 5 unique categories based entirely on their wisdom: perfected beings, true beings, celestial beings, divine beings, and finally heavenly beings. It's just a wildly detailed map of spiritual evolution. All right, Section 3, reaching the celestial limit, the ultimate potential. So what is the absolute ceiling here? What's the max level for a human in this specific worldview? Well, the text calls this ultimate achievement becoming a super celestial being. And listen, this isn't just about being a really good person or achieving standard enlightenment. The text actually claims that becoming a Buddha is way easier than becoming a super celestial being. According to Zhu Feng, these beings have completely staggering abilities. We're talking instant invisibility, infinite transformative powers, and the ability to move actual mountains with just a single thought. Crazy, right? And he doesn't just leave this as some abstract, floaty concept. He gives us specific geography. According to the cosmology here, the headquarters for these beings is the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world. He even introduces a specific super celestial being named Yua, who lives on Snow Peak Island, as an example of someone wielding these infinite powers. Zhu Feng even points to Jesus here, bringing up the idea that faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains, to really illustrate the sheer reality-bending power of a single thought at this ultimate level. Next up, Section 4, conventional versus unconventional thinking, the Great Divide. So how on earth does someone actually ascend to these impossible-sounding levels? Well, Zhu Feng anticipates the skepticism. People are going to say, hey, we're all human, same organs, same basic desires. But he pushes back hard, highlighting these massive differences in human mindset. Look at these extreme historical contrasts. On one hand, you have someone crying and gritting their teeth over a tiny medical needle. On the other hand, he points to the famous historical figure Guan Yu. This guy literally sat there, casually chatting and laughing, while a doctor scraped his bone to treat a deadly poison. Surface level? Sure, both are human. but their inner essence, their capacity to handle reality, vastly different.
He also looks at how wildly different minds process the exact same stress. Imagine a $1,000 tuition bill. One person might be so completely distraught over that $1,000 that they resort to the most tragic, extreme measures. Meanwhile, someone else looks at that exact same $1,000 and treats it like it's literal waste paper. The text uses this to prove a point. What he calls unconventional thinking effortlessly handles situations that conventional thinking completely breaks down over. He lists all these contrasts, people who enthusiastically bungee jump versus those who stay firmly on the ground. The illiterate six-patriarch Huineng, who mastered the most profound doctrines, versus lifelong scholars who just turn into stubborn pedants, or child prodigies hitting fame in their 20s while others go their whole lives unnoticed. Xu is making a definitive claim here. He's saying that acknowledging these baked-in human disparities is step one. If you acknowledge the differences, you can continuously grow. If you don't, you remain spiritually blind, essentially just sleepwalking through a mediocre life.
Which brings us to Section 5, Connecting Science and Spirit Beyond the Five Senses.
Now, the text openly admits that a lot of people are going to dismiss all this celestial cultivation stuff as total nonsense. Why? Because most of us rely strictly on our basic five senses instead of our spiritual perception. But to bridge this gap, Shifeng actually points straight to physics. He notes that quantum mechanics is already starting to recognize that the movement of subatomic particles is tied to the observer's consciousness. Think about that. He's suggesting that human consciousness isn't just passively watching the world go by, it's actively, literally helping to shape reality.
Building right on top of that, he brings up those famous Japanese water crystallization experiments, the ones claiming to show a profound link between human consciousness and molecular structure. The big takeaway here, your way of thinking directly shapes the physical form of existence. The text claims that if you can master the secret, you can achieve in a simple minute what would take an ordinary person 10,000 years. We're talking rapid, qualitative leaps in the structure of life. He even claims that stuff like superluminal, that's faster than light travel through space and time tunnels, becomes entirely possible once you transcend standard three-dimensional space.
And that leads him to ask a genuinely compelling question. Can we deny that ultraviolet rays, infrared rays, or radio waves exist just because our naked eyes can't see them? Obviously not. So he argues pretty much everything the human mind can imagine actually exists somewhere, maybe just not in our specific time and space. Today's science fiction could literally be tomorrow's reality, or reality in another dimension right now. The limits of our eyes and ears absolutely do not define the limits of total reality.
And our final section, Section 6, Awakening's Spiritual Perception, the Final Call. Here, the text shifts gears from this massive cosmic theory into a really direct call to action. Because the core purpose of this whole celestial cultivation thing isn't just to entertain us with magical concepts. The ultimate goal is unveiling the meaning of death itself. It's about clearly understanding the scenarios that happen after life and realizing that every single word, every tiny action we take right now in our three-dimensional space is actively forging our future existence. The text wraps up with this intense, powerful sense of urgency. Xu writes, "Every moment is invaluable, so strive earnestly." He is practically begging individuals who want to reach those higher realms not to waste their precious time just merely surviving in mundane society. He wants you to awaken that spiritual perception immediately and follow the guide all the way to the highest possible realm of life. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by this text's wild assertion that our thoughts literally create physical form. Ask yourself, what kind of reality is your current way of thinking shaping for your future? If your mindset absolutely dictates your spiritual grade and your eventual multidimensional reality, what world are you building for yourself right in this exact second? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning the limits of your reality.